important here in relation to your question. If the water had gone on being collected and amassed on the mountain tops where the temperature never rises, say minus 30 or 20 or whatever it is, if it rises then it would not be frozen, of course. The temperature remains constantly below zero. How would it melt? It requires a special law to be created. Now that law is only in relation to water and ice. According to this law of nature, which is specific for water and ice, under the pressure of the ice, the lowest surface, the temperature at the lowest surface which touches the soil goes on increasing. It is not equally distributed to the whole of the ice pack. Only the surface which touches the soil on the mountains, that becomes so hot, not hot in the ordinary sense, but so hot as to be able to melt the ice closest to the surface. So it goes on melting continuously at a regulated rate. Otherwise, if the heat was to be raised over the entire area of the mountains, then the whole ice would melt in 1 month or within, say, a month or so, and all the water would, instead of benefiting man, would flood the whole earth. So it had to be regulated and calculated so that continuously, over the year, the human requirements are met. Can you conceive of a better system? More well organized, more well planned, by an authority which also has the command over the laws of nature. Otherwise, these special laws, if they were not created by God for this purpose, would never come into operation. But that's not all. There's another aspect which has to be understood. How is the electricity produced? That again is a very interesting thing. The electricity is produced because of a very specific law, that when water evaporates, it automatically generates electricity, while it doesn't happen in other cases. Why must water create electricity? The surface it leaves has a negative electricity left behind, and the surface, the vapors which rise, they have a specific electric charge, and this charge varies in different positions, different parts of the ocean or the water surfaces. Its operation is well organized and well controlled, so that the clouds which we see in the air are either negatively charged or positively charged. The potential begins to flow from one side to the other. The resultant is zero. And by the time both the charges are zeroed, all the water hanging in the air becomes water again. And you are asking me this question: what should we do? Should we neglect the minimum we can do to recognize the grace of Allah and prefer the worldly employers for what they pay us? For 8 hours tiring service you are paid. But to God you can't go 5 times a day for only a few minutes. What justice is in that? Right? Thank you.
Thank you. The next questioner is Jariullah, I can't pronounce his surname, Jariullah Makin Abuda. from
You
leadership.
understand, you know whom we talk
Do you know,
about.
yeah.
Come on.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Fine,
I'm learning Urdu, so I should say, I should pronounce it in Urdu. Aapka kya haal hai?
खैर, शुक्रिया, मैं अच्छा हूँ. आप ठीक हैं?
Only some, vaguely. Still learning. I mean, I shouldn't really take up the time.
If you participate in my Urdu classes, which I take
Inshallah,
regularly,
one day.
then inshallah you'll learn Urdu in a matter of no time. No?
Inshallah.
Okay.
My question is more related to, I watched the television, I think it was last week or a week and a half ago, and I saw that there's a specific movement within Islam of other sects that seem to have some, they like segregated schools. And I want to know what your opinion is on the benefits and the disadvantages of such a movement, maybe within our own community or just within the other sexual communities.
I do not quite grasp the question as to what sort of movements you're talking about.
Okay, in this country, to start off with, there were like Roman Catholic schools specifically based for Roman Catholic people.
Oh yes, that's what you mean,
yeah.
that movement.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Of providing religious education
Yes,
to various children, school-going children in Britain.
yes.
Right? Yes. I remember my discussion with the then Minister of Education or Secretary of Education of Britain, whom I had invited to dine with me, and he had accepted very gracefully. And at that time, this question was very hotly debated. And because he was in a position to influence the decision of the government, he asked my advice as well. The advice I rendered him, and I stand by it even today and will continue to stick to that advice, was simply this, that if in school educations you begin to succumb to the pressures of demands by any religion, that the government should be responsible for religious education as well, then you will be opening a Pandora's box which will never be shut again. And you will be inviting trouble and headache. What about the Hindus demanding the same as Muslims are doing? What about the Sikhs? What about the Zoroastrians, the Buddhists, and the other cultists of all sorts? If one member of the society has a right in a certain area, all other members of the society have the rights in the same area. And then what control will you exercise over the misrepresentation of religious ideologies by their own scholars themselves? Islam is not anymore a single identity or entity. It has got split into so many. Prior to you, a questioner asked me about this school of jurisprudence and that school of jurisprudence. But jurisprudence is okay. It doesn't, discussions on jurisprudence no longer boil the blood of people who are involved in such discussions. But when you turn to the area of doctrines and beliefs, then the whole society is worked up by the mullahs or the leaders of any religion to a degree that they always, this agitation created by the heads of religions always ends up in bloodshed and violence. So where is the wisdom of entering this, this area of disorder and the area which would certainly lead to violence and split of the society, and many factions would come to not only disagree, but in their disagreement to reach each other's throats, to quell the vice before it rises. Now this is the human experience. Why to enter this most horrible area of controversy which you will never be